Even though Archolos is a new mod by Gothic standards, it quickly installed itself as the ultimate Gothic mod. More accurately, it is a whole new game and a good prequel to the original saga. Carefully woven into the world of Myrtana, the plot takes us to the island of Archolos that wasn't explored or even mentioned much in the previous games. It is clear that the developers of the Chronicles of Myrtana took it upon themselves to fix and refine the gaps that the original Gothic games had in their structure. One of the most prominent changes is the balancing between the chapters. Gothic's formula is great overall, but Piranha Bytes never could flesh out the endgames. Perhaps it is a subjective matter, but I never liked the final chapters of these games. Let's talk about what Chronicles of Myrtana does better than Gothic. One of the things I noticed is that even in the densest location quest-wise, like the eponymous city of Archolos, the game does a good job portioning the quests. In many other RPGs, including Gothic 2 to some extent, arriving at a quest hub usually ends up in picking tons of quests that take up space in the journal. No wonder it can become overwhelming when in a span of a couple hours, you receive disproportionately more quests than you manage to complete. I like to think that designers of Archolos made a conscious choice to somewhat limit that aspect, and the side quests you receive are mostly tied to which point you are at in the main quest line. I never found myself having more than 5 to 7 quests active at the same time. Granted, I didn't go out of my way to collect all the possible quests at the same time, yet judging by the quest lists online, I seem to have cleared all the side content, while generally completing everything each chapter had to offer. Like in the original 2 games, Archolos is divided into 6 chapters. The whole division into chapters is a big design pillar of the Gothic games, not seen in many other games. In fact, I cannot recall any other game structured like that at all. What it means is that the main quest is broken into portions belonging to different chapters. Of course, they are so called because those portions of the main story focuses on a different thing each time. Aside from the main storyline, each chapter typically has its own side quests and events, although missions from previous chapters can carry over if not finished previously. Switching chapters also triggers monster respawns, allowing the player to pursue their level-up rush through the game world on every such occasion. As with any work of fiction, and especially with Piranha Bytes-style games, one of the main questions is whether the ending lives up to the rest of the content. One thing I can say about Archolos is that the ending is revealing and can come as a surprise. Essentially, Marvin, the protagonist, can take on the role of a familiar but mysterious character from the very first Gothic game. Not without a grain of salt, this ending might come with plot holes and inconsistencies if you look too close, but let's not do that. It is at least fair to say that the ending fits the rest of the game, so it merits to be categorized as decent at the very least. What is better than that single ending is the fact that the developers decided to make Fallout-style ending screens based on choices we made in the game. Moreover, the character's destiny can really depend on how and when we choose to finish the game. There is even a secret early ending with the best possible outcome for the protagonist. Caveat being that this ending requires going against the tropes of the genre, and especially against the instincts of hardcore Gothic players. More specifically, you have to really roleplay the main story and skip side quests. Underdeveloped is the word to describe the magic in Archolos. While all the spells and magic circles and such are still there, the fact that you don't get to join a dedicated faction for magic users severely limits the role-playing legitimacy of the Arcana path. While there is a mage monastery, and at some point you even get novice robes, the path of the mage looks more like an afterthought in this game. However, at the same time, I am intrigued with the alternative that the developers managed to squeeze in its stead. This is how it works. You find magic books hidden in the world. Each one teaches you magic circles in exchange for learning points. You also have to find or purchase runes. Can't create your own in this one. Weapons-wise, there are dedicated staves for magic users. Armor has it the worst. Unfortunately, no full-blown mage robes can be conventionally accessed. Sounds pretty bad, right? But what intrigues me is the idea of playing a self-taught wandering mage, finding bits and scraps of magic knowledge wherever the road takes him. Can make for an interesting second playthrough. Some familiarity of where the more elusive magic books are hidden sure will come in handy. Playing a warrior build is all too familiar, yet even here, Archolos tries not to innovate, but to upscale the balancing, such that you can feel comfortable with either strength or dexterity. Gothic 2 Knight of the Raven already had some dexterity melee weapons, but the idea was only kindled there. Chronicles of Myrtana expand upon it greatly, adding a large variety of unique strength and dexterity weapons, melee and range. Dexterity swords and such are given a larger damage output to counterbalance the fact that they still feed on strength to deal damage, as is the case in Gothic 2. Not much can be said of bows and crossbows. Their deal is the same as in the other games, only again, the variety is generous. Whichever attribute you choose to focus on, if you are a completionist and like to go out of your way to explore everywhere and develop your character fully, you will get that chance as well. Starting with a strength and melee-focused character, I later decided to try the tropes of a bowman and explore the new dexterity melees. By the end of the game, I was boasting over 220 points in each strength and dexterity, being able to wield any weapon whatsoever. Archolos is generous with sources of skill points if you are a nosy, kill-everything in every chapter Gothic player. That being said, I didn't even take it to extremes like some people do, clearing out NPCs towards the end of the game, for example. I was also relatively lax about my monster hunter rampage in every chapter. Tried to get as many as I could, but didn't go out of my way to slay the creatures that were giving me too hard of a time in the earlier chapters. Another specialty of the Gothic games are the joinable guilds. While many CRPGs have at least something similar in one form or another, Gothic makes joining guilds a profound choice. Whichever faction you choose to call your home will not only result in some side quests available instead of others, but will also, and more importantly, dictate which badass armor you will wear. See, Gothic is a lot about fashion and badassery. Where in other games armor is readily available and has tons of variation, in Gothic it is scarce and very desirable. It wouldn't be an overstatement to say that you might want to join a specific guild just to get to their armor. Not only does it offer sometimes noticeable protection against enemy bites and slashes, it simply looks very cool. Very Gothic. And this is where a mod might shine or fall flat. Many mods add new armors, but few understand the design limitation, both gameplay-wise and aesthetically. Chronicles of Myrtana does this, dare I say, huge aspect of the game justice. New armors fit the style very well, are each unique and desirable to get. Only complaint is that magic users have next to nothing to go with. None of the new armor choices look like they would be fit for a mage. It would have been cool to have some robes available for acquisition, even if they were on the weaker side. So which joinable factions do we have in Archolos? There are the City Guards and the Merchant Guild, aka the Mercenaries. Nothing out of the ordinary. Both come with their own quests and trainers and cool armors. The main other distinguishing feature is that guards have crossbow trainers at hand, while Archolos mercenaries focus on bows. I should emphasize that this choice will not hinder your progress with learning weapon skills, no matter which kind you prefer. There are other trainers available in the world. The only difference is in price and perhaps earlier availability. Learning skills is a real adventure of its own in Archolos, as it should be in a Gothic game. Aside from planning when to finally spend those hard-earned skill points, you can also find that some teachers are cheaper than others. Some train to higher levels, and some are simply nicer to interact with. Also, as the game progresses, you will find some of the instructors to become unavailable. Archolos does all of that and does it good. While your chosen faction may speed up training of some of the skills, it doesn't have to be the main decisive factor for joining. Exploration is key. The city of Archolos itself possibly offers most, if not all, skill trainers that you would want. If at some point you cannot find one, perhaps the time isn't right, and the next chapter will unlock the desired teacher. Skills that allow you to make your own gear are best learnt as early as possible to ensure a steady flow of money and gear. In my playthrough, I made sure to learn alchemy and pickpocketing as early as possible, in addition to mastering the one-handed melee skill. This both let me fight effectively, while being able to collect and make enough permanent stat potions to improve strength and carry better and better swords. One of the things many mods try to develop to a certain extent is crafting. A rudimentary system was already present ever since the very first game. Archolos doesn't reinvent the wheel. Crafting is still simple and done through a bunch of dialogue options when interacting with related equipment. For example, to engage in smithing, we interact with an anvil and choose what kind of sword to make. One of the novelties is grouping melee weapons into 3 quality classes. They just require spending more LP to learn different mastery levels of smithing. The other quality of life improvement is being able to switch between required materials and the stats of the weapon, all the while being in the crafting menu. Convenient. While there is bow making, it is hardly worth mentioning as it translates directly from smithing. Only there are bow making stations instead of anvils that let us craft there. There might be fewer recipes for bows and crossbows than there are for melee weapons, yet it is still a viable and immersive source of income. Not to mention the usefulness of self-crafted bows, especially if you are playing a ranged build. Alchemy is carried over from Gothic 2, save for a larger variety of craftable potions. In addition to alchemy, Archolos expands the possibly fan-favorite cooking. Now, I'm emphasizing because this isn't the first mod where I see cooking being built upon. People seem to love it. Maybe it is Gothic in essence? Anyhow, learning cooking in Archolos does not require learning points, and recipes are aplenty. Cooked food is not as potent as potions in terms of health or mana restoration, but are a very viable replacement at least until mid to late game. Even better, cooking even offers some rare recipes for permanent stat effects. If you are role-playing without alchemy, you can still do pretty well. Cooking will be a worthy replacement. Deserving a special mention are scripted encounters, which are most prominent in the main city of Archolos. They are varied and numerous, spanning every chapter of the game. They truly make the game world feel alive, more so than any of the previous installments of the series. And that says a lot, since Gothic is known for pioneering NPC day and night cycles where they go to sleep and to work and have a variety of activities during their in-game days. Archolos expands on that by adding triggered encounters that are spaced reasonably well within the time framing of the game. When a widow approaches the protagonist, noticing his likeness to her late husband, or when some crazy person seeks advice for how to attack city walls, or the more cliché run-ins with gang members. All of these little things spring the city to life. Archolos feels like a living and breathing place. The rest of the island is given similar justice, although for obvious reasons, including a grain of realism, encounters on the tract are less common. Gothic has a proud legacy of fan projects, many of which are ongoing, and some having just begun. While content mods vary in quality, I have fond memories of a few that I have played. The Golden Gate mod for Gothic 2, Knight of the Raven, is a fantastic continuation of the nameless hero's journey, as he returns to Yarkandar, the main location of the Knight of the Raven add-on. Another mod that always comes to mind when I think of complete and unique fan-made adventures is the Dark Saga mod. This one has a particularly memorable first chapter, where the events take place within an orc mine. It is one huge prison break scenario and is very well made, full of tightly packaged Gothic-style content. Once you play past that bit, you find yourself outside with a real landmass to explore. While that part becomes a lot more generic, it is still worthwhile. Finally, there's a gigantic mod called the Odyssey. It is good as far as Gothic mods go, but is way too big. It literally combines the whole of the second game, plus third game's equivalent of landmass plus several large islands. While some areas are rather empty and uninspired, it is an otherwise interesting mod. To reiterate, the biggest downside is its formidable size. As of writing this, there have been rumors, and a trailer, of an upcoming update that will boost the game to version 2.0. Mod of the Decade Edition, they call it. Have to agree with that. It is difficult to think of a better mod of the past decade. Allegedly, it will include mini-games, new items, events, and even some new locations, presumably woven into the existing map. Archolos turned out to be way bigger than I expected, with about 130 hours filled to the brim with exploration and monster slaying. It seems an arduous task to play through its entirety again. When the update comes out, it might as well be different. If there are indeed enough changes, why not run through the game playing the other faction, for instance? To summarize, Chronicles of Myrtana is an amazing adventure and a love letter to fans of the Gothic series. When that old-school action RPG itch kicks in, look no further. Give Archolos a go, but be prepared for an adventure spanning a good 100 hours or more.